Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. Today we're trying something a little new with this cool background because I have a green screen, so why not use it? This in the background behind me is Mount Sunday. You can just barely see right there over my shoulder, which is the actual mountain in New Zealand where they filmed uh, Edoras. That is the capital of the Rittermark and the Writers of Rohan and all of that. And we are going to talk about the Horse Lords of Rohan from the One Ring RPG. Um, the Riders of Rohan are many people's very favorite characters, favorite part of the Lord of the Rings series. Absolutely mine. Since I was a kid, I knew that if I ever were able to live in Middle Earth, and if I couldn't be an Ent, then I would be one of the Rohirrim. And the book that they put together for the One Ring really is incredible. So let's take a look at it. This is the setting book, and we've talked about this before. All of the One Ring supplements come in pairs. Each part of the world gets a setting book where they describe everything and what it's like and what the characters are like and how the government works and all these different things. And then there's a companion book to that that is full of adventures. And there is one for Rohan, and it's called Oaths of the Rittermark, and we'll be doing that one next month. But we're starting right now with the setting book, the Horse Lords of Rohan. So let's take a look up close at this awesome PDF. That is what we get to look at today. So this is great because it does cover the entire area. Let's see if we can find a little map that kind of shows everything we're looking at here. Show us. We get a lot of history, a lot of history. There's Edoras. Okay, it's not going to show us a whole big map of the whole area. I know there is one somewhere. Anyway, this covers the Rittermark itself, the vast plain where the riders hold sway. And then it also includes Fangorn Forest. It also includes the Tower of Orthanc and Saruman. It also includes the land of the Dunlandings. And in fact, it does have both Rohirrim and Dunlandings as new cultures that your character can come from. So you can now have, as player characters, the Riders of Rohan and the Dunlandings. And if you've got the Adventures Companion, which is one of the very first One Ring books that I reviewed and recommended, then you've already got access to the cultures. This gives you all of that other information. So this is a good example here of what it does. This book will start here, the regions of Rohan. Here's all the different things, and then we're going to talk about Edoras. So here's a map of Edoras, and then we're going to have the map of the area all around it. And the One Ring has, of course, the incredible travel system that I rave about all the time, which is why there are hexes all over this, and these different symbols will apply to that. And this, the plains themselves are easier to travel in than the mountains, which is why they're different colors, and so on and so on. Then, as it gets into the details of each region, it's going to talk about opening Edoras as a sanctuary. It's going to give stats and history for a lot of the major characters. This game takes place in between The Hobbit and The One Ring, and so the king of Rohan is actually not Theoden from Lord of the Rings. It is his father, King Thengel, who is right here, and we get to learn all about him. There's another thing you can do if you ever receive a title. Talks about Queen Morwen, who is Thengel's wife, Theoden's mother. And then it talks about, somewhere in here, actual King Theoden. There he is. Back when he was very young. I think he is, let's see, born in 2948, and this takes place in the 70s, I want to say. So he's not super young, but he's not king yet. Then we get, some other less regal characters. There's a servant, there's a door warden, there's all these different people. And then, of course, sprinkled all throughout, there's these other fellowship undertakings and things that you can do. So just tons of information. Tons of information. Here's an actual map of Meduseld, which is the castle, the hall of the king in Edoras. Um, and then we get to talk about some of these other things. Harrowdale is a little town nearby, and sooner or later we get to Dunharrow. Dunharrow is back in here. Let's click back and show you on the map. Dunharrow is where the dead men are, right? Here's Dunharrow. So in the Return of the King, if you've read that or seen the books, you know that Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, they go to Edoras. They manage to get everyone excited and like, okay, we're going to go join the war. We're going to ride down to Gondor and help them out. And then Aragorn says, okay, you go do that. I'm going to stick around here and I'm going to go into Dunharrow and I'm going to talk to the dead men. And then he gets the army of ghosts. That's Dunharrow. Okay? So then we have all of the information on Dunharrow and how that works, and you know what it's like to actually go through the paths of the dead. And there's, you know, not likely that people who are not Aragorn are going to have any reason to go there or any success in talking to them. But here's a bunch of rules if your characters want to do it anyway. And then we get to talk about the plains. So we've talked about Edoras, then we go into the plains, and here we get, oh, a much better map. Okay, so here is down here, Edoras, Dunharrow, etc. This is the Rittermark, which is the Eastham-net and the Westham-net. There's the Westfold. Up here in Nan Curunir, this is where Orthanc is, and the Tower of Saruman. Over here, just off on the other side of this map that we can't see, is where the Dunlandings come from. This is Dunland, this is all of that. And in fact, this is the Gap of Rohan right here, in between the Misty Mountains and the White Mountains. And if you follow this road all the way up to like over here somewhere, then that's Bree and the Shire. So that's how it all connects. If you go up here through Fanguard Forest, following these Misty Mountains, you'll eventually get to Lorien, and you'll get to the Moria. And then over here, kind of up here or way up here, is where you're going to find Mirkwood. Thank you. I can't even think right now. So this is the area that we are dealing with. This is the map that I was looking for. And so as we're talking right now about the plains itself, the wilderness, there's a lot of, again, people you can meet. Not necessarily important people from the books, but representative people so that you know the kinds of characters that you can encounter here. All of these new Fellowship Phase undertakings just sprinkled all over the place. New hazards for that great travel system to use, different things to run into, specifics of, you know, who are the kinds of things that you're going to run into. The Field of Celebrant, what's that? Celebrant is right here. It's this thing up there. So you can learn all about all these different parts of the world, and you can go there. We talked about the Westfold. See, there's Edoras. Westfold is up above it. Eastfold is down here. All of this information. Now we're going to skip through a bunch of pages so we can get back to the next thing. We talk all about the whole thing. There's so much information. So much information. It's all incredible. Don't let my... Okay, here we have a big thing about Helm's Deep. Now, Helm's Deep is not where people tend to think that it is. Do we get a little map of Helm's Deep? Nope, we don't. We do get a map. It was just back here. Where are you, Helm's Deep? Helm's Deep is right here. It is actually northwest of Edoras. I know a lot of people, myself included, for a long time assumed that it was down to the south or the east because they were on their way to Gondor. They weren't. They actually fled northwest to get to Helm's Deep, and they hid out there and they beat the army that marched down here from Orthanc and attacked. And then they're like, okay, now we're going to go to Gondor. So anyway, that's important to me, whether it's important to you or not. Pretty big description of what Helm's Deep is and how it works and the history behind it and all the things that you can do. and it's great. And then we talk about the Great River. This is the river that will go up and go past, eventually become the River Running and go past Lake Town and all of that stuff. And then I'm skipping through because I want to find. Oh, then we talk about the Gap of Rohan. You know what? I'm gonna just go to the table of contents because there's all this incredible stuff and it's all super cool. But I want to show you Fangorn now. There we go. So Fangorn gets its own chapter. Holy cow. After we have talked all about the wilderness, all of the Rittermark, and there's so much of it. And you saw me clicking through there. Tons of things to do, people to talk to, things to accomplish, hazards to encounter. Absolutely packed to the gills with stuff. And then we get to Fanguard Forest. There's a long, long history of Fangorn, and we get a detailed map of it. We get to know all about what it was like, how long it's been there. You know, they go through all 3 ages, thousands of years of history for this forest. And then we get to talk about the Ents. There's specific rules for Ent drafts. There's, the Ents themselves. What are they like? How do they work? What's going on with them? How do we talk to them? What do we do? There's so much wonderful information about the Ents, what an Entmoot is like, specific rules for their encounter system, which is their social system for the game. How are we going to talk to Ents? How are we going to handle an Entmoot? You get all of this stuff. And then we get specific characters. So there's Treebeard. There's 2 more named Skinbark and, Quickbeam, Beachbone, Wormwood. All of these people. There was one other after Skinbark, though. Oh, yeah. So, right here, Treebeard, a lot of people don't know this, Treebeard's other name is Fangorn. And there's, whether he is the forest or the forest was named after him, or nobody knows because the Ents are so ancient. They actually are older than the elves are, and the elves are older than the moon. So they've been around for a long time. Nobody knows exactly what's going on. And Skinbark is one of those. He's one of these Fingalas or Fladriff or something like that. Anyway, yay! So Wormwood is kind of a cool Ent who's like the dark, scary one who tells ghost stories. They talk about the Huorns, which are super neat. They go into specific locations in Fangorn, like what are you going to do if you get to these different places? Non-Mortaleb is a place so scary the Ents don't even go there. And then how are we going to have adventures? What kind of adventures are we going to have there? In fact, I love this little sidebar here because it's like, what's in Non-Mortaleb? Nobody knows because the Ents don't even go there. So if you want to put an adventure there, you got to make it up yourself, which is great. But it gives some really cool ideas of what it's like. And a lot of these ideas do show up here. A pack of wargs that are too clever by far, a tribe of sickly pale goblins, trolls, more fungi than flesh. There's monster stats for all of that stuff later in the book, and it's awesome. Let's keep going. What am I looking for here? Things to do in Fangorn. Okay, now we get to talk about Dunland, the folk with no kings. The men of Dunland, the women of Dunland, the people of Dunland, they have a fraught history. They are very proud of the fact that they don't have kings. They are very bitter about the fact that they don't have the Rittermark anymore. It actually used to belong to them, and then Gondor gave it to Rohan and said, hey, you Northmen who rode down and helped us defeat Sauron, would you like to have this vast, incredible plain that's full of wonderful stuff? And they're like, sure. And then completely displaced the indigenous population, which was awful. And so the men of Dunland and the men of Rohan hate each other violently and for very good reason. And in fact, there's a lot of other stuff like King Wolf and different things that have happened in their history. Anyway, the movies kind of present the men of Dunland, the Dunlandings, as these kind of wild savages. And that's not really what they are. They are not regal in the sense that Gondorians or even Rohirrim are, but they are certainly men and women. They're human beings, and they're very, they have a rich culture of their own that's just much more rustic and pragmatic than the typical kind of highfalutin nobility that the books tend to concern themselves with. And so, anyway, they're really interesting, and I like them a lot. And you can go through and you can learn all about their history, how they used to own everything and then they got kicked out. You can talk about how they've actually been allies with Saruman for a very long time. They made friends with the dwarves when the dwarves were kicked out of Moria. One of the many times they were kicked out of their homeland. That's kind of what the dwarves do. They came down and they found the Dunlandings and made friends with them because Dunlandings were like, yeah, we've lost our homeland too. We can vibe together. And so you get a lot of that in here, and it's really cool. And then eventually, there are full rules in the back for how to have Dunland characters, which I find really cool, and we'll get to those in a bit. There's characters, notable NPCs if you want to interact with some key Dunlandings, which are kind of neat. And then there's notable places, their actual cities and villages and stuff. So hooray for that. Now we'll talk about Isengard. This game, chronologically, is set before the time in which Saruman went full bad guy. Spoiler warning. In between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, he is still in the process of learning about the Shadow and being corrupted by the Shadow, but he has not fallen to the Shadow. And so while he has actually been allied with the Dunlandings for a long time, he's in fact made friends with several tribes of orcs before and currently. And, long before he becomes a servant of Sauron, he's already kind of this very Machiavellian kind of, I want to use the word pragmatic again. He uses the tools he has available. And if those tools are goblins out of the Misty Mountains or orcs out of the White Mountains, so be it. That's what he uses to do what he needs to do. And so the whole history here of how Isengard was built, how Saruman came to be in charge of it, how he patrols it, what he does, is all fascinating. And then there are, very specific things we can get in here. What is it like to enter Isengard? How do you talk to him? What is it like inside? One of the things I love about this is as it goes through some of the characters, and we'll get to some of them later on, a lot of them made friends with Isengard, like some of his key servants and stuff, because they broke the rules. There, is a description of somebody who sneaked in, got over the wall, got inside, and then Saruman caught them. And instead of throwing him out, was like, oh, you're very resourceful. You could be a valuable ally. And then kind of a lot of his followers are like that. People that he has deemed clever enough and maybe not rebellious enough, but rule breaking enough that he knows he can use them. And so here we go. We get all these stats for Saruman, which is really interesting. How to use him as a servant, how to become a servant of him. How does he make rings? All of these great, cool things. How does his magic work? How do all these other people work? And then we've got Alfric, who's his guard, and Dianok, who's his door warden, and all of these cool people. So there's a lot of neat things to do in and around Isengard. So, hooray. After we've talked about all of this stuff, now it's time for the monster section. This is a very complete, very cool monster section. So we've got, monster section. NPCs that you can fight. Dunlandings aren't monsters, but here they are in the monster section. Wolfling riders. So if you want to be one of the kind of foot soldiers of Dunland, or if you want to be one of the riders of Dunland. Then we get servants of the White Wizard. We get the Uruk-hai, half-orcs and half-goblins, the Orcish Wolf Riders, Gazor Three Deaths, which is such a cool name, Orcs of the White Mountains, lots and lots of cool people here. The pale ones, these are those pale sickly goblins that have like poison and stuff that they use. This is one of those fungus trolls. The Great Boar. Here's Stoneclaws the Bear, Fangorn. Here's stats for Huorns, and then different types of Huorns. The Dark-Hearted Huorn, the Wandering Huorn, all these different things. And then, of course, there's stats for the Dead Men of Dunharrow. If you want to use the Dead Men of Dunharrow to their full potential, you're actually going to need the Rivendell supplement, which is kind of obnoxious, but that's the one that gives all of the rules for the undead, and they didn't want to reprint all of those rules here in this book just for one monster block. So it's frustrating, but there it is. Last of all, here we have a big section about horses. And what is it like? How do we ride horses? How do we raise horses? How do we acquire and trade horses? Not every group is going to care about this, but the groups that do are going to be delighted because these are very good horse rules. Okay? And then, there's actual descriptions as well for, different qualities that horses can have. And what is it like to have a horse? How do you use a horse in combat? Which is actually going to be very valuable to a lot of groups. So hooray for this. This is all wonderful. And then we get to the final section of the whole book, which is the cultures. There are the Writers of Rohan, and there are the Dunlandings. How do you use them in your game? So, these are laid out the way all of the cultural blocks are in all of the supplements. And like I said, if you've got the Adventurer's Companion, you've got this information already. One of the interesting things, well, I'm going to talk about Dunlandings. Before we talk about Dunland, let's talk about the Writers of Rohan. So, you get, the standard description of all the stuff you do, and then there's the cultural blessing that they have, the starting skills, all of this stuff. And then we get backgrounds. Every character picks one of these backgrounds, and then picks either a virtue or a reward. And the rewards are back here. And so the virtues are cool things like, if you just want to be an awesome, horse hero who rides out, you can have a squire who follows you around and does a lot of things for you. Anytime you get knocked off your horse, he brings it back for free. Anytime you lose your shield, he gives you another one for free. And so it's almost like an action economy thing, except with the cool flavor of you have some little boy named Egloff or whatever who follows you around and helps you out in battle, and then one day will become a warrior of his own, which is great. I do like this cultural virtue a lot, Old Songs and Children's Tales, which basically is you're one of the Rohirrim who has paid attention to all of the folklore, and that has made you wise, and it's helped you learn a lot of secrets. And so then anytime that you're trying to do an Inspire, Travel, Insight, Healing, Riddle, or Lore test, if your song rating is higher, then you get a bonus to it. And so that encourages you to pump a lot of points into song, which not a lot of people use. And it just is it's a really neat background that gives you a lot of cool bonuses. So, hooray for that. Now let's talk about the Dunlandings. The people of Dunland are numerically a little weaker than some of the other cultures in the game. But their powers that they have, the virtues and things, are actually stronger. And so up front, they may seem like they aren't contributing as much, but as you get into it and as you actually play through them, you'll see, oh, they can do some really incredible things. And I really like the flavor that gives them, just this kind of sense of hidden talents that up front they don't look as impressive, but then, they've got it where it counts. It's a really neat thing. So they have, standard thing everyone has, the cultural blessing, the starting skills, their backgrounds, all of this kind of thing that they pick. I like this one, Mist Child, which is just the super sneaky people that are, their favorite skill is stealth, and they can do all these neat things. Oh, also, there's a new trait called Wild. You value little the comforts of what others call civilization and prefer to trust your instincts when you must deal with others. Every one of these Dunlanding backgrounds can choose Wild as one of their 2 traits if they want to, which is super cool. Then we get into, the cultural virtues, and there are all these neat things. Some of them are about being sneaky, some of them are about being wild, some of them, This ill omen one is great because it allows you every night to have a vision. And then during the next day of play, when something comes up, you get one extra bonus die to apply to it if you can say, oh, I had a vision about this, and then explain how the vision you had last night was preparing you for this moment. It's a really neat way of handling that kind of prophecy stuff. So I like it a lot. Anyway, then at the end, there's, here's a sample Writer of Rohan, here's a sample Dunlanding, and that's it. That's the whole book. So I love it. I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorite books in the One Ring series, simply because they've taken two of the parts of the world that I love the most, which are the Rohirrim and the Ents, and they've given them this exhaustive, wonderful, rich description that is there for player characters, it's there for adventures, it's there for lore masters. It's wonderful for everything. And then on top of that, they've taken some of the parts that are there, but that I hadn't considered, like Saruman and Orthanc and the Dunlandings, and given them a ton of information to make them incredibly appealing and cool and easy to fit into a story. So, all in all, this book has got everything, and players and lore masters alike are going to absolutely love it. So, hooray for this! Please, if you play the One Ring, or if you want to play the One Ring, check out the Writers of Rohan, the Horse Lords of Rohan. This is one of the best books in the line. And then next month we will look at the adventure supplement associated with this called Oaths of the Rittermark. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I am Dan Wells, and you are awesome.